I wanted to play a game of what if. I know you guys are trying to filibuster over there so we don't get to use our time effectively over here. But here's the what if for today. Georgia or Michigan? If they played on Saturday, who's winning that football game?
I'll let Hudson take this one, but we'll look. Go ahead, Hudson. You go first, and then I'll go.
No. I'd love to hear you. Go. I'm the Georgia.
I think Michigan wins. I think Michigan's the most complete team in the country. That was one of the other takeaways from Ohio State, Penn State on Saturdays, that J.J. McCarthy's clearly better at that position than the others. That said, I love Ohio State finding ways to win defensively in the manner that they did. But look, I think Georgia's flawed. I don't buy into the idea that Georgia's going to get better after losing Brock Bowers, okay? This isn't like Jaws when, the shark didn't work, and so they're like, oh, what if we just don't film the shark? And then they created a masterpiece. That's not how this works. I think Michigan, they haven't played anybody, but they've smashed everybody. And so, no, I mean, hell, I don't know if Georgia makes it out of the SEC unscathed, so give me Michigan.
Yeah, I think J.J. McCarthy is the difference maker, not only in this hypothetical matchup, but I think J.J. McCarthy, guys, it's kind of the big difference maker this year for Michigan. I mean, 50% of his passes are going for a first down or a touchdown. Like, everybody knows about the run game with Corum, the great defense. I think the Michigan of the past wasn't as explosive and consistent in the passing game. The way McCarthy's playing right now, shoot, he might be in New York. So, and then without Brock Bowers, like, I'm with you, T-Bob, as much as it hurts me to say, like, Georgia is not going to be as legitimate offensively. So if J.J. McCarthy is playing like this at the end of the year, I think Michigan's the best team in the country.
We hear all year about how Michigan hasn't played anybody, but you see those strength of schedules?
58
yeah,
for Michigan, 99th for Georgia. I mean, and they're beating the nobodies better than Georgia's beating their nobodies.
They didn't struggle with Auburn, that's for sure.
Wow.
Look, we agree, boys. Georgia is shameful. Georgia should be tarred and feathered and paraded around the streets for being cowards. They somehow got every game at home. I've never seen anything like it. All right, though. Now it's our time. Goonies time. Here on Rivals Down South, youtube.com/Watch Stadium. Mark Carmen, wait, Georgia has a 9-9 schedule strength. They were talking about who Michigan has played. Look, guys, again, I know we're ostensibly SEC guys, but you got to understand, you will catch no Bulldog defense here, okay? They're going to have to prove it here over the next couple of weeks. Speaking of next week, guys, playoff rankings going to start coming out next week. I know we're all very excited for that. Let's start to maybe unpack a little bit of that, because now after week 8, you have 6 teams that are still undefeated in UGA, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, and Oklahoma. Joshua, we'll start with you. Which of these 6 would you peg as being the ones that'll get in?
Now, are you asking me what I think it's going to be by the end of the year, or are you asking me what I think the initial ranking is going to be?
No, I want to know by the end of the year. Who do you think survives? Let's make a little early call here, and then we can circle back in a few weeks and see if we made it right.
Yeah, this is an interesting one to me. I think Michigan's the most solid one in there, so I'm going to ride with the Wolverines. The Washington thing became more difficult after watching them over the weekend, but I do think that they have a better defense than I ever gave them credit for. And Michael Penix Jr. is probably not going to play that bad again this year, so I would put them in there, although it is a tough conference that they got going on. Oklahoma, again, like another one of those teams. I'm like, man, come on, guys. Like, we don't know anything about any of these teams because they play bad when they're not supposed to. But I also don't trust Florida State, so I put Oklahoma in there. And then the final one, I'm with you on Georgia and what they're going to be. And I think Ohio State has built themselves enough pad into their schedule with a victory over Notre Dame and a victory over Penn State that if they can keep it tight in Ann Arbor against Michigan, they'll probably get that 4 spot locked down.
Ooh, do you agree with that, Jake? If you have a one-loss Georgia, let's say Georgia trips up but still wins the SEC, and then you have an Ohio State that loses to Michigan, but that's the only loss, do you think that the Buckeyes would go over the Bulldogs?
Well, I actually think the conversation is I don't trust Washington to run the table. I think they can very well have 2 losses by the end of the season just with how brutal their schedule is. Whereas I trust Ohio State, frankly. I do trust them. I think Michigan's the best team in the conference. I think Michigan gets there. That's my highest degree of confidence. And I think Ohio State will have done enough at the end of the year. I think about how we're talking about Georgia. And I think of the psychological aspect of this. I mean, Kirby Smart, the way he can play to his team about how, hey, guys, maybe we're not getting the national respect that we deserve. I still think they can get in there. So those are my three. And I think Florida State can sneak in there. It'll be either between Florida State and Oklahoma, in my opinion, just because I think the Pac-12 eats itself alive as it's done in the past.
Yeah, Hudson, to me, Florida State and Jordan Travis are the ones that, like, ignore them at your own risk. They've been sneakily kind of regaining some momentum. That's a good Duke team that they beat the other day. And I know Ryan Leonard goes down, but Florida State finishes strong this year, Hudson. Who do you think's it?
Yeah, I would put Florida State in there instead of Oklahoma and keep the other three teams that I think that you guys mentioned. I think if Georgia has one loss, they're in. If they win the conference championship, I mean, there's never been a precedent set where a one-loss conference champ has been left out. So I think that's enough. I would have Michigan in there. I would have Washington in there. They got the best offense with the best quarterback. And I would replace Florida with Oklahoma, or Florida State with Oklahoma. I think there's a chance Oklahoma could see Texas again in the Big 12 championship and lose that. And so I think those would be my four teams: Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Washington.
Okay, since we're doing the crossover here, I got a question for the Big Ten boys. And this is something that I've been kind of bandying about in my mind all day. And it's after this Ohio State-Penn State game, when we look forward to the next major clash, Michigan-Ohio State, the end-all, be-all, are you more bullish on the Buckeyes now or more bearish? Because I can see it going either way, right? Like, I love that Ohio State is winning with defense this year and has two major wins that they accomplished on the defensive side of the ball. Like, that is growth in an area where they need it. But I'd also be lying if I said I wasn't a bit concerned about what I saw to Kyle McCord and trying to keep pace with maybe like a J.J. McCarthy. So, Joshua, what do you think? Are you feeling better or worse about your Buckeyes after Saturday as it relates to Michigan?
I think I feel better in general about them. You mentioned the winning on defense. The thing that I have been whining about for the last few years is a guy who played on a really good defense at Ohio State and won a championship doing it that way. I think there's value to having it. I'm also talking myself into certain things that can happen that would give Ohio State a chance. Michigan, as much as people talk about who they haven't played, they also haven't played their players a ton throughout the games. And so now you get into a shock, which I think Penn State went through a little bit early on of, oh my gosh, there's actually dudes out there. And then if it is a 4-quarter game, have you conditioned to play for 4 quarters is the question that you would ask there. I also think it is really impressive that Ohio State did not have Emeka Egbuka, their wide receiver too, who's probably a first-round pick, did not have Travion Henderson. They don't run the ball very well, but he certainly helps in that equation. And Denzel Burke, who maybe has been the most consistent defensive player for Ohio State, did not play in that game either. And they were able to get a gritty, tough win where I feel like Penn State really only scored 6 points because they had that garbage time touchdown at the end of the game. I like this team. I still think Michigan's the clear favorite. I still think they're a better football team, but I do think Ohio State's chances feel better to me right now. I haven't really changed, to be honest. I don't necessarily feel better or worse. I kind of went into this season feeling like Michigan had kind of separated from the pack. They've seized control of the Big Ten. And some of the things I wanted to see in order to confirm that was, hey, is J.J. McCarthy in this passing game going to wake up before they actually needed it? And that's been confirmed multiple times throughout the season, probably his best game maybe of the year this past week. And as good as Ohio, they've made significant improvements on the defensive side of the football. I don't think Michigan's going to have as much luck with explosive plays as they did last year. But I look at this Ohio State-Penn State game, and I understand how Manny Diaz wants to call defenses. And he left his guys on an island, and that proved to be costly against Marvin Harrison Jr. That's not the way Jesse Minter, who's the defensive coordinator for Michigan, wants to get down. He'll play man and zone. He'll disguise and mix in coverages. That's going to be a challenge. I want to see Kyle McCord respond to that against a defense that could present that. So, my opinion really hasn't changed. I still think Michigan has enough separation. If I was a Michigan fan, I feel pretty confident about the boys in blue.
The red corner, blue corner boys feel confident, y'all. Always fun to have you here on Rivals. But for now, we will let you go, boys. Have a great day. Thank you to Joshua Perry and Jake. But right now, it's time to visit some SEC recap. Another great weekend. You had a battle in T-Town. As stop me if you've heard this before, Alabama falling into an early hole only to come storming back late and win this game. You see the stats right there. Actually, a surprisingly good statistical day for Joe Milton if you're just box score watching, but unfortunately, this chart you're seeing right now doesn't tell the context of the game, where Milton and that offense, they were playing well early, having a lot of success. They actually outgained Alabama 187-36 in the first quarter. But from then on, 322 to 217 for the Tide. And I told you it on Friday, Hudson. I told Mike it. The Jalen Milroe makeup sex is undefeated. He's gonna get you a little upset in the first half, maybe turn it over a couple times, gonna be yelling at the television, but by the end of the game, your head's kind of spinning. You got a cigarette in bed, and you're wondering why you were ever even mad in the first place. I mean, Jalen Milroe's the second highest rated passer in the SEC right now.
Yeah, I don't know. That clearly doesn't speak highly of quarterback play in the SEC, and I don't mean that necessarily as a knock toward Milroe, but he was only 4 of 7 in the second half. Like they only put the ball in the air 7 times in the second half. Mainly, they had a scoop and score for a touchdown. Defense played great, but I'm still in kind of shock at watching the first half for Tennessee. They go into halftime, and it's like a totally different team came out in the second half. I'm still in shock at that. And Alabama's defense is for real. Milton, I'm sitting there like you, T-Bob, watching the first half, and I'm going, man, Milton is having the best game of his career. And then they come out in the second half, and they can't get anything going. I think the biggest surprise for me was this great rushing offense for Tennessee that was 6th in the country, averaging 230 yards per game. They couldn't run it against a paper wall. I mean, they were soft. They're getting pushed around. They had less than 100 yards. So I know Josh Heupel wants to complain about the refs, but that was a very, very poor second half showing from Tennessee.
I mean, but again, right, at a certain point, correlation does equal causation. And the cause of Tennessee's poor showing is second half Alabama is just great this year. Like, for whatever reason, they are slow starters. This is now the third big game in a row in which they've gotten down by increasing amounts each time, only to come back and win by increasing amount each time. I mean, they dominated this. Like, if you're going to kill, I love it because right around Halloween time, Alabama really is that perfect scary movie trope with the antagonist, right, where you think he's dead and then he comes back for the one final kill. All the things that Scream talks about and all the other great horror movies and satires of our time. That is Nick Saban and this college football team. You got to kill him because you think you got him, and then they come back strong than ever. And the problem is, Hudson, are you seeing how damn happy Saban looks? Did you see him after the game smiling, jaunting away with his cigar? I don't know that I've ever seen this man with so much pep in his step. And it kind of starts to make sense because why wouldn't he feel a little energized by all of this? He hasn't been used to being the underdog, right? He's had to find ways to motivate teams that are lapping the competition. That's hard to do. That's exhausting. It's driving. It's constant. Well, now it's much more natural when you motivate teams that are in these legitimate fights, and it's much more fun. Like, it's much more exciting when you end a game that you just won with a 13-point second half comeback versus a game where it's like 56-12, and you're like, well, I wish your execution was better in the third phase of the game. Like, whatever. No. Like, Nick Saban is loving what is going on currently. And if you're asking me what happened to the Tennessee rush attack, bro, the Bama defense is good. Imagine that. Yeah. The Bama defense is really good again. Second in score in the SC, third in total defense, first in sacks, second in tiffles. They're just damn good.
Saban does seem less volatile this year, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, bro.
Like, it's just an observation.
I'm of a mixed mind, right? Because I kind of appreciate this aging legend seemingly finding some sort of youth. And if I hadn't suffered at his hands so directly or so much through the years, and if I didn't hate the fact that he seems to win everything all the time from afar, you can actually be a little bit like, oh, you know what, dude, good for him. But whatever. Alabama, as good as ever. And the last thing I'll say on the game, maybe the craziest part, and again, can Alabama afford to do this against an LSU and that explosive offense? We can get there. But the one thing about Alabama this season is they do feel a bit inevitable. Like I was texting our guy, SEC Mike, during the game, who's a Tennessee guy, and even when they had the lead, there was never the thought that they were going to be able to win or close it out. Yeah. It was always, ooh, this red zone failure is going to cost them. Ooh, this, that. And, well, lo and behold, Mike was right. So congrats to all you Tide fans out there shaping up Crimson once again. All right, coming up next here on Rivals Down South, Lane Kiffin keeps finding a way to win with Ole Miss, and look at a couple of broken offenses and where they go from here. Keep it locked right here on Stadium's Rival Down South.